Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the balance changes that were made to all of the weapons on launch for the final Season 3. And I am going to rant a little bit about how I feel about the balance changes, basically. So in the clip that's playing, I am using the LH1 in Power Shift, and I can't state this enough, but I've never used the LH1, and this is my first game using the LH1, and I never really use weapons that are hit scan in general. So all I've used this season is a very small amount of flamethrower with heavy, and the rest has just been bow with light because the bow is really, really cool. So that's all I've used this season. This is literally my first game using the LH1, and while I'm using it, I have also changed my sensitivity so that it does scale with my aiming down sight sensitivity. I normally have that off, and I've turned that on. That completely changes how the aiming works. So despite both of those things, I'm still going to have lots of kills in this game. That's how broken the LH1 is right now. It went from being a very high skill tier, high skill ceiling weapon to being suddenly extremely usable by everyone. And the interesting thing about this change is it wasn't just the visual recoil that was removed, which is good. I'm actually a fan of the visual recoil change, but the problem is that the visual recoil was removed and the player damage was increased from 49 to 52 when it already did pretty good damage. So it got a little bit of an overbuff there, and it also got a decreased fire rate, which is kind of insane. It just got buffed so much, which is just kind of insane considering it was pretty good already. Now we come to the M60 and the Lewis gun. Both of these are for the heavy. In Season 2, it was pretty rough using the Lewis gun. It was fine. You could bear it. If you put a lot of time into learning the recoil pattern, you'd be able to get it down pretty well. The M60 no one used. So the Lewis gun and the M60 have both been nerfed here. Both of their damage has gone down a good bit, and both of them have basically got harder recoil patterns. You're not going to win any mid-range fights with the M60 or the Lewis gun if you're shooting someone that's using the AKM and they have good aim. You're just not going to win that fight, even though you've got 100 more HP. And I think the idea behind these nerfs to the Lewis gun and the M60 is that the devs don't want heavy to be overpowered. But the thing is that, the Lewis gun and the M60 isn't what was making the heavy overpowered. What was making heavy overpowered was how much health it has compared to how much faster it can kill the other classes. One RPG and one shot from anything, that light is gonna be dead. One RPG, a couple of shots from anything, that medium is gonna be dead. And then one RPG and one good shot and slam, that heavy is gonna be dead. That's what makes the heavy powerful, not the Lewis gun and the M60. So both of these were nerfed, and I kind of get the idea behind it, but it's not a good thing. It's just going to make people using these weapons feel like it's just going to make the gunplay for both of these weapons feel really, really bad, and I don't think this is going to be changed anytime soon, so that's going to be for the whole season. So the heavy now basically doesn't have the gun that they can compete with at mid-range. And again, I'm pretty sure this was done so that the heavy isn't as overpowered, but this is the wrong way to balance things. You don't want to balance things by making someone's guns suck. You want to balance it by making everything feel good and everything feel strong, right? And I've been saying this for a very, very long time. So I'm actually a fan of the LH1 buff. It was overtuned a little bit because the developers wanted players to suddenly be able to use it again. I don't think it needed a buff, but I'll take a buff where I can get it. I think it's quite funny. I do like the visual recoil changes. The less visual recoil, the better, as far as I'm aware. But the damage buff was a little bit overkill on that as well. There were a lot of other changes in the patch notes, but these two were the main ones, and I'm basically just going to focus on these. So for the LH1, I don't know why this was buffed. I really could not tell you why this was buffed at all. I have absolutely no idea. It was a very solid weapon. If you had decent aim, the LH1 was a very, very solid weapon. If you could handle the visual recoil and all of that, you could do some damage with it back in Season 2. So, I don't know why this is buffed, but I think something that might have to do with it is I think maybe the devs were looking at the metrics and they saw that the LH1 might have been being underused. And I think just because something is underused doesn't mean it's bad. And that's going to be the point that I'm going to kind of make in this video. If something is underused, I don't think it means it's bad. And if something is used a lot, I don't think that means it's going to be good. And I think because of the visual recoil and because it was so difficult to use, I think a lot of people last season probably weren't picking the LH1 as their go-to weapon. So I think the devs saw that and were like, oh, this weapon must be kind of weak, let's buff it. And then they buffed it and now absolutely everyone is using it because it was like strong before and now it's just extremely overpowered. So I don't think that that's going to solve all of your problems. I don't think looking at the data and just the data and looking at a weapon and seeing that it's not being used, I don't think that that means the weapon is weak. And I feel like that's kind of the takeaway from here, because the Lewis gun is what a lot of people were using on the heavy, and that was nerfed. The M60 I think was nerfed because I think the dev, you know what, actually, I think that the Lewis gun and M60 were buffed, nerfed rather, for a different reason. I think they were nerfed because the heavy was just the meta in Season 2. The meta was going to be like a couple of heavies and a medium, or a couple of mediums and a heavy, and if you were a team of 3 lights, you weren't going to win that game, especially if it's ranked. So I think to kind of counter that, the devs were like, oh, you know what, we don't really want to make any proper balancing changes that like totally shake up the game. We're just gonna nerf the Lewis gun and nerf the M60 so the heavies can't really do anything at medium or long ranges. And that's just a really bad decision. It's just going to make the heavy feel a lot worse to use, and it's going to make them feel like they don't have any uniqueness to them, because they already had a sledgehammer and they got a spear this season as their new weapon. So they now have 2 melee weapons that both do exactly the same thing, and they don't have any mid to long range weapons. They have the 2 melee weapons, they have 2 shotguns, which are both pretty hard to use, and then they have the flamethrower, which is like close range as well. And then they've got the M60 Lewis gun, so that they literally don't have any medium to long range weapons now. So I kind of get the idea behind why these were nerfed. I'm pretty sure it's because the devs saw that the heavies were overpowered and they wanted a way to kind of nerf that, and they nerfed it by nerfing the Lewis gun and the M60. But the Lewis gun and the M60 were not the problem with the heavy. The problem with the heavy is like the RPG, the charge and SAM, their health size, and all of that kind of stuff. And also just the amount of damage the other weapons do as well, like Sledgehammer even is very good. Flamethrower is very good. So the M60 and the Lewis gun wasn't the problem, so it's very surprising to see a nerf to those, because now it's like just loads of people that play heavy, they're just going to put on the flamethrower instead or something, and then what do you do next season? Do you just nerf the flamethrower as well until the entire heavy class feels super bad, and then the meta becomes medium and light, and then no one plays heavy? It's just like a bit of a sketchy road. And this isn't just from this patch, this has been from a lot of patches. There's been a kind of continuation of the devs listening to player feedback when a lot of the players don't know what they're talking about, and making changes accordingly. So another possibility is a lot of players last season were like, oh, the Lewis gun is really strong, you should nerf it. I don't think many people were saying that, but maybe some were, and that the Lewis gun was nerfed. I don't know why the M60 was nerfed. The Lewis gun was significantly better, but you know, it's probably because of what I just said, actually. Probably because they wanted the heavy to not be strong in general. But the thing is, if you don't want a class to be strong in general, you have to nerf that class. You can't just nerf its weapons, because then another weapon's going to take its place. And if you nerf all of its weapons, then no one's going to play the class. And this has kind of been a problem since Season 1, or even since the betas. Like, the light used to be quite strong. They used to have the stun gun, which was really, really annoying to play against, so they were quite solid. And instead of kind of nerfing the class to balance it out, the stun gun was just removed, and basically, and then, you know, no one plays light anymore, really, and light kind of sucks now, unless you're playing terminal attack, but, you know, who's playing that, honestly? But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit. I think these balance changes weren't fantastic. Like, buffing the LH1, which is already pretty solid, is just a bit weird to me. And then nerfing the Lewis gun and the M60 literally does take away the entire heavies options for medium to long range. Like, no one's going to be using Lewis gun and M60. It's just going to be an absolute pain to use. Either you're going to switch to medium and use AKM or FCAR, or you're just going to use like the flamethrower or the KS-23 if you're real confident. But yeah, I just wanted to have a little rant about this and talk about some of the kind of weirder changes for Season 3 of the finals. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to be it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Farewell.